Hello everybody and welcome to another One Stop Wrestling podcast. I'm Alex, and with Survivor Series fast approaching, today I'm going to be looking at some of the greatest matches in the show's history. Now, Survivor Series has been one of WWE's longest running PLEs, going all the way back to 1987. It's the second longest after, of course, the granddaddy of them all, WrestleMania, and it's been synonymous with the classic Survivor Series match since its inception. There have been a few occasions where that hasn't been the case, like 1998, where WWE held the acclaimed Deadly Games tournament, which was a tournament to crown a new WWE champion after the championship was vacated, which led to The Rock's famous heel turn and his first world championship in the WWE. A fantastic piece of booking all around. Then there was, of course, 2002, where WWE first held the Elimination Chamber match. More on that later. And since 2022, it has been rebranded to Survivor Series War Games, where there would be at least one traditional War Games match, which has also been welcomed by fans as the War Games stipulation was very popular back in the late 80s, early 90s when it first came to fruition. There have been lots of great moments in Survivor Series. We've seen the debuts of legends like The Undertaker, The Rock and Kurt Angle at the event. Back in 2016, when the second brand split happened, we saw a battle for brand supremacy each year, where you would find the Intercontinental Champion facing off against the United States Champion. Then you'd find the tag team champions of each brand facing off against each other, as well as the WWE Champion facing off against the Universal Champion. Now, those shows have meant little in terms of general storylines. It's just a battle for brand supremacy on the night, but they have produced some great matches, some of which we'll talk about in this podcast. So, without further ado, these are the top 10 matches in Survivor Series history. I will start off with a couple of honourable mentions first. First one is Ric Flair versus Triple H, a last man standing match at the 2005 Survivor Series. Now, this was one for the fans who like hardcore, bloody matches, because this was a war, with the last man standing stipulation and the fact that blood could still be used coming into great effect. And there was blood aplenty in this match, with the Nature Boy donning his traditional crimson mask. And it was the culmination of the Evolution breakup story, which led to a really great violent war between the former members. Then there was also the triple threat tag team match in 2002. It was Edge and Rey Mysterio versus Eddie and Chavo Guerrero versus Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit. And what more do you need to hear other than those six names battling it out for the tag team championships? The last honourable mention is John Cena versus Shawn Michaels versus Triple H in 2009 for the WWE Championship. Now, this match was a lot of fun. Again, three titans at the time, three huge main event stars, all going at it for the top prize in the business, and the match was fast-paced and compelling. So those are the honourable mentions out of the way. Now, here are the top 10 matches in Survivor Series history. Number 10, Bret Hart versus Shawn Michaels for the WWF Championship in 1992. Now, Bret had not long become the champion at this point. It was his first championship defence, and it really was a moment in time where Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and a lot of the stars of the late 80s has sort of had their time, and WWE were looking to produce their next stars to take them into the so-called golden generation. And who better than Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels as they showcased this on this night in 1992 with an intense battle. They were both fighting to essentially become the new face of the company for the next few years to come. And they had a really, really solid match. A lot different from their match 5 years later at Survivor Series. That one won't be making an appearance on this list. Of course, I'm referring to the Montreal Screwjob. Nevertheless, a great early encounter between Bret and Shawn in their careers before they were really catapulted into the main event. Number 9, Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles in 2017. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this was the brand supremacy era of Survivor Series, where the WWE Champion would face off against the Universal Champion. And if you look at the match on paper, Lesnar versus Styles, it really is a dream match. You've got the Beast, the ultimate fighting machine, versus the smaller, more technical, faster guy. And their styles, pun intended, meshed really well in this match. Brock obviously dominated the match for the most part, but when Styles made his comeback, the crowd became unglued. From this point, the action in the ring got really notched up and Styles had some amazing offense and Lesnar sold like an absolute champ like he always does. Some of the near falls for Styles were brilliant, including a 450 splash and the phenomenal forearm, which nearly got him the victory. He also trapped Brock in the calf crusher, which again, like I mentioned, led to Brock's excellent selling, where he made you think he may actually tap out. Of course, the Beast was too strong for Styles in the end and got the win, but this was a terrific match and the first and only encounter between Brock Lesnar and AJ Styles to this date. And of course, we are lucky that WWE switched the belt just before Survivor Series, otherwise we would have got Brock Lesnar versus Jinder Mahal. Number 8, Team Bischoff versus Team Austin, Survivor Series 2003. Now, Team Bischoff comprised of essentially a lot of upper card heels on Raw. You had Randy Orton, Chris Jericho, Christian, Mark Henry and Scott Steiner. And then Team Austin was made up of a lot of upper mid-card babyfaces. You had Shawn Michaels, Booker T, Rob Van Dam and the Dudley Boys. And this really was a great story. Austin and Bischoff were the co-general managers of Raw and they'd been feuding for most of 2003 for control of the brand, and they could never coexist. So this match was made to find out once and for all who was going to be the general manager of Monday Night Raw. And this match really is all about Shawn Michaels. He goes down to a 3-on-1 deficit at the end where he's all on his own against Randy Orton, Chris Jericho and Christian, and he puts in one of the great classic Survivor Series match performances. Bloodied and battered, Michaels' selling was exceptional, making you buy into the fact that he was fighting against all the odds with the 3-on-1 deficit. HBK fought back from underneath, eliminated the two other guys, so it was just him and Randy Orton left one-on-one. And the finish was exceptional as well. Austin, unhappy with Bischoff's interference, attacked the former WCW head honcho to a huge pop, and whilst he was distracted, Batista came in for a huge Batista bomb on a bloodied and beaten Michaels, which allowed Randy Orton to become the sole survivor for the first of 3 years in a row. A deflating moment for a hot crowd who were firmly behind Austin and Michaels, but a really great match nonetheless. This is exactly how to do the classic Survivor Series match. Number 7, Batista versus The Undertaker, Hell in a Cell match for the World Heavyweight Championship in 2007. Batista and Undertaker had an acclaimed feud throughout the whole of 2007, starting off at WrestleMania, where The Undertaker dethroned the Animal for the World Heavyweight Championship. They then wrestled to a double KO at Backlash in a last man standing match, and they had a great on-off feud throughout the whole year. And it was always babyface versus babyface, which was something rare in WWE, but it really worked with these two because they were absolute titans on the SmackDown brand at this point. And what better way to culminate their excellent feud with a Hell in a Cell match? This match was brutal and bloody, and it was one of the last real matches of its type before the PG era kicked in 2008. There were all sorts of weapons used, including stairs, tables and chairs. There were lots of near falls at the end to keep the crowd guessing who was going to win. Lots of blood and lots of brutality, and in the end, the match came to an end after an epic comeback from injury by Edge, who had not been seen for many months beforehand. The Rated R superstar was dressed up as a cameraman and he proceeded to lay out The Undertaker, which allowed Batista to retain the title, which then led to the great Edge-Undertaker feud going into WrestleMania 24. One of the last great Hell in a Cell matches before the PG era came in and they started making them a pay-per-view exclusive. Number 6, Team WWF versus Team Alliance 2001. So, Team WWF comprised of The Rock, Chris Jericho, The Undertaker, Kane, and The Big Show. And the Alliance was made up of Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, Booker T, Rob Van Dam, and Shane McMahon. Now, if you look at those names on paper, bar Shane McMahon, they're all top of the card, main event, world champion guys that were all very, very over with the crowd. And that alone just made this match huge. A huge deal in terms of star power. Now, this feud, as many know, could have gone a lot better. The whole invasion angle was botched somewhat because of the fact that when WWE bought out WCW, they couldn't get any of their big stars as they were still tied in to a Time Warner contract. So we're happy to just sit at home, get paid and ride the contracts out. So we didn't have the likes of Hulk Hogan, Goldberg and Sting, which took away from the feud and what could have been an all-time great blow-off match. Regardless of all of that, this match was still an excellent 45-minute war between the two teams to see who would get ultimate control over the WWF. We also got The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin face-to-face as the final two, which was one of the first times they did since their epic WrestleMania 17 encounter, which again is just so high on star power that it just catapults this match into the stratosphere. And obviously, Vince McMahon was never going to let Team Alliance win, was he? The WWF took the victory after Kurt Angle turned on the Alliance and was revealed to be a planted mole by Mr. McMahon, which led to Team WWF being victorious. Number 5, Team Raw versus Team SmackDown 2016. Now, this was the first Survivor Series of the brand supremacy era, and they really built this up as a genuine SmackDown versus Raw rivalry. Probably not quite as good as the rivalry the two brands had in 2005, but this match was an absolute barn burner from start to finish. This was nearly 50 minutes long, had all the top stars from both sides, including the WWE Champion and the Universal Champion, and just had all sorts of stories going on, which is what made the match so good. Team Raw comprised of Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Chris Jericho, Braun Strowman, and the Universal Champion at the time, Kevin Owens. And on Team SmackDown, you had Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt, Dean Ambrose, Shane McMahon, and the WWE Champion at the time, AJ Styles. Again, so much star power in this match. The storytelling throughout the match was exceptional. You had Ambrose and Styles who were feuding over the WWE Championship on SmackDown that just couldn't get along. They helped eliminate each other through the course of the match. Then there was an amazing spot where Braun Strowman was eliminated because SmackDown's mascot, James Ellsworth, yes, who remembers James Ellsworth's 5 seconds of fame? He grabbed Braun's foot and stopped him from getting back into the ring, which caused the count-out elimination. And then, in a great visual, Braun took Ellsworth to the top of the stage and launched him off, and Ellsworth splattered through 2 tables. The match in general was filled with great drama, including a huge spear from Roman Reigns to Shane McMahon, which pretty much KO'd the commissioner of SmackDown at the time. Lots of great moves, lots of great storytelling, and lots of great sequences. Jericho and Owens had their own little story going on where they were best friends, and Owens snapped and got himself eliminated by using the list of Jericho, which got him disqualified, which then led to Jericho becoming unhinged, and he himself got eliminated just a minute later. The best spot of the whole match for me, though, was when the Shield reunited just for that 1 minute to dispose of AJ Styles. Obviously, they were on opposite sides, but Ambrose just hated Styles that much that he joined back with his old Shield brethren to send AJ crashing through the announce table. 50 minutes of carnage and great storytelling. Number 4, Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan, 2018. Again, this is a similar entry to the Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles match, where you had the WWE Champion against the Universal Champion in the main event. There was no story really, there wasn't anything on the line, it was merely for pride and brand supremacy. However, we got one of the best Brock Lesnar matches since his comeback in 2012. If you ever need a match which is rich in psychology and a match that just makes complete sense from start to finish, then this is it. Another scenario where it's David versus Goliath. Bryan was a heel at this time, but he kind of played the de facto babyface because, you know, he kind of had to. He's the small guy and Brock Lesnar is the beast. And it was a classic David versus Goliath scenario. Brock Lesnar destroyed Daniel Bryan for about the first 10-15 minutes. And then Bryan, using his incredible technical ability and his incredible intelligence, kind of wore Brock out in the classic rope-a-dope tactic. He refused to stay down, Brock got tired, and Bryan mounted an epic comeback, including a running knee, the yes lock, which he applied to Brock a few times. Again, masterful selling from Brock Lesnar to make Daniel Bryan look as strong as possible. Again, like the AJ Styles match, the Beast eventually would conquer Bryan. This was a terrific match. And on paper, why would you expect anything else? As it's Brock Lesnar versus Daniel Bryan. Number 3, Team Authority versus Team Cena 2014. This was another example of a great feud that culminated in a classic Survivor Series match. This was all about the story. The in-ring action itself wasn't exactly setting the world on fire until the final 10-15 minutes after John Cena was eliminated. But this was all about the story. You have the Authority that were running roughshod over Raw for pretty much the whole of 2014. They had the Money in the Bank briefcase in their back pocket as Seth Rollins was the holder and being groomed to be the next champion. He was the captain of the team, and he was joined by Rusev, Mark Henry, Luke Harper, and of course, the corporate demon, Kane. Now, the less said about the corporate demon Kane, the better. Anyway, they took on a ragtag bunch of babyfaces who had had enough of the Authority and just wanted to see them out of power. That comprised of John Cena, Dolph Ziggler, the recently turned babyface Eric Rowan, Ryback, and Big Show. So there were high stakes on the line here. If Team Cena won, the Authority would be out of power. If Team Authority won, every member of Team Cena, bar John himself, would be fired. High stakes, a great story, and once John Cena was eliminated after about the 568th heel turn from the Big Show, the match really kicked into overdrive. Dolph Ziggler, facing a 3-on-1 deficit against Kane, Luke Harper and Seth Rollins, similarly to Shawn Michaels back in 2003, mounted an excellent babyface comeback, and the crowd were behind him every step of the way. This was when Dolph was mega over with the fans and people just wanted to see him succeed. Dolph disposed of Luke Harper and Kane, and it was down to him and Seth Rollins one-on-one. And then, of course, we got the magnificent WWE debut of the icon Sting. Triple H interfered in the match after a ref bump. All seemed lost for Team WWE and Dolph Ziggler until Sting made his iconic first appearance. Coming down to the ring, taking out Triple H with a Scorpion Death Drop, placing a prone Ziggler on top of Seth Rollins and getting the huge babyface win for Team Cena. The only downside to this one was the fact that Rollins and Ziggler had to essentially play dead for about 10 minutes while Sting came out and took out Triple H. But the visual of Sting in WWE for the first time staring down the game was brilliant. Number 2, Triple H versus Shawn Michaels versus Rob Van Dam versus Kane versus Chris Jericho versus Booker T, the Elimination Chamber match for the World Heavyweight Championship in 2002. The Elimination Chamber was a brand new concept in 2002, and as is the case with a lot of things, the first is always the best. And that's no exception with the Elimination Chamber. The match really worked from the get-go, a brutal demonic structure which inflicted pain and injury on every combatant in the match. Triple H took some awful punishment. He ended up with a crushed larynx after Rob Van Dam's 5-star frog splash off the top of one of the pods. The look and sound of the superstars getting dropped on the steel grates, getting smashed into the steel chain link that held the chamber together was painful to watch. This was just an all-out war for the World Heavyweight Championship, and it really, really was a spectacle to behold. And the match was made even better by the awesome finish, where Shawn Michaels overcame adversity and disposed of his longtime rival Triple H to capture his first World Championship since 1998. A truly brilliant moment for the showstopper and a huge crowd-popping moment to boot. And number 1, Steve Austin versus Bret Hart, 1996. Now, after hearing every other entry before this, you probably guessed that this was number 1 because how could we possibly leave it out? 2 of the greatest superstars of all time, near enough in their prime, going at it for 20 minutes to see who was the better man. Bret had been out from the company since WrestleMania. This was his first match since his famous loss to Shawn Michaels in the Iron Man match at WrestleMania 12, and it looked like Bret never missed a beat. Austin was coming into his own as a badass, after his 1996 King of the Ring win and iconic Austin 316 promo. Austin had taken off, Bret had come back, it was a perfect storm, and the two produced absolute magic in the ring, as they pretty much always did when they faced each other. This match wasn't quite as good as their WrestleMania 13 match, but then hardly any match in WWE is. Some of the psychology was great in this match too, as Austin targeted Bret's neck, and he really tried to prove that he was the top dog in WWE. As he was being catapulted into the main event, this was a big match for Austin. Ultimately, though, a great story of Bret's experience and technical ability would win on the day, as he produced a terrific counter to the $1 Million Dream to roll Austin up and get the 3 count. However, Austin still didn't lose anything in defeat. If anything, it raised his stock as the company saw he could go up against the biggest superstars in some of the biggest pay-per-views and tear the house down, which he did on this night. Were it not for this match, we may not have got the awesome Bret versus Austin match at WrestleMania 13. Austin may never have become this huge babyface and got over the way he did. Bret, a student of the game and one of the best wrestlers on the planet, delivered plenty of classics, but this was probably the first all-time great Steve Austin match, which proved he belonged in the main event against the best superstars in the world. Well, there you have it. There's our top 10 matches in Survivor Series history. What did you make of our list? Please feel free to give us a comment down below on what you think should be number 1. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to One Stop Wrestling on YouTube. It really helps the channel. Those were our top 10 matches in Survivor Series history. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and we will see you on the next podcast.